recently got you working on threshold. Break that. What is that down? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean the majority of that is zone two, so I actually have my schedule right here. Um, and this is like if I do hit all my training in the week and I have time for it, this is what it would look like. Um, where is it? But realistically speaking, I always I not always, but often maybe don't have time for one long zone two session. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. So Mondays, I have in the mornings, I try to do 2.5 hours zone two. I've been able to hit that pretty consistently in the past few weeks. And then at night, I have some FTP on the bike. Oh, the morning zone two session is broken up into 90 minutes on the bike and then 60 minutes on the run. It's like a break session. And then at night, I have that FTP for 90 minutes. But the FTP portion of it is just about 40 minutes. So the rest of it is just zone two warming up to that FTP.
Okay,
And then
so
the
that
FTP,
let's just expand on that. So the FTP sounds like it's in intervals.
yeah. So it's 3 minutes on at my FTP and then 1 minute off. Um, right now it seems to be around 225 to 230 watts, which yeah. So 3 minutes on at that wattage and then 1 minute off. Um, just for 10 reps. And
Okay.
then as we spoke about, um, I'm going to be increasing that um, every week or two or so,
Yeah,
like the reps.
we've got to get that FTP back up to what it used to be.
Yeah, yeah,
So not well, more we'll be more specific. If you want to even do anything about trying to attempt to get on any podiums on any of the shorter distances, Olympic or sprint, you've got to get that FTP pretty much up.
yeah.
You've got the mileage.
What would be your suggestion as to like what wattage to get it up to?
Uh, well, I mean, it's less about what wattage to get it up to, and just more about to get it up to where you were, right? So just comparing yourself where you were.
Yeah,
I have in my notes, I have in my notes 315, but that was more than 2 years ago, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that was when I was trying to jump
It's
on with
crazy.
we were jumping into the studio, the cycling studio. I was trying to jump in on your program. Oh my God, those were amazing sweat sessions. Amazing. I think my legs got bigger doing that than any squats that I've ever tried to do. I should probably get back on that. But
Yeah, my legs. I mean, yeah, my legs got pretty good shape back then for sure. It's
okay.
crazy.
All right. So
So yeah, and then
you're doing a lot of work. What's missing?
what's missing in terms of training?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've been prioritizing cardio, and that's because of the goal. I love strength training, so I've had to reduce that a little bit to prioritize the cardio. In terms of what's missing, yeah, I'm not sure. Like in terms of the swimming, I've only just done zone two in swimming. I haven't done any type of like speed work. Um, but I need to I need to just try to hit the workouts every week. I think sometimes I need to make more time. I think that's what it is.
Okay. Well, the speed work is negligible, right? We don't care how fast you are. Maybe if it was a time trial, but we do need that endurance, right?
Yeah.
Most of the races, most of the races going to be absolutely, zone two in nature anyway. But races are won and lost on who can hold that threshold a little bit longer, who can ride that out when it's needed. So
Yeah.
the speed work will come. We just got to get you way back up there. So looking
Yeah, and I've
forward.
also just been I've been dealing with a knee thing the past year. It's way better now. Like I don't feel it anymore, but all last year I was struggling with that.
Yeah.
You know,
How was were having it on that squat, right? Did you pull back on the squat?
I did, and I don't feel it anymore.
That's
So
it.
I
Yeah.
I am still squatting, just not as heavy
Let's do the
anymore.
math on that, right? So what was the math? What was it was bilateral squat, yeah?
Yeah, barbell. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the rep scheme? What was the load?
So I was when I was doing it, I was undulating. So some days I would do like a 5 by 5, and it was I think I got up to like 215 5 by 5 on a deep squat, and then like the following week I would do like a 3 by 10 at my body weight, which is 175. And then like the other week I would lower it to my 15 rep max, and then I would just undulate it like that. But I think
What was the 5 by 5 load?
two like 215.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, but but now that I think about it, I think when I started feeling the pain was when I guess I didn't undulate for like I did the 5 by 5 maybe too close in proximity to each other.
Hmm.
And granted, I was doing all that cardio work, so definitely it was a lot of it of like just toll on the knees, you know.
Yeah. Why
So
don't you
that
yeah, why don't you see if you can get that that's 107 a piece. Why don't you see if you can take 160 on the split squat for a ride and see if that will not bother you with dumbbells on
okay
in a split squat stance.
in a split squat stance. Okay,
Yeah, so let's just, some little quick math on that. We do know there's some great literature out there that, unilateral or split stance, we don't have to go at the same exact height, or I'm sorry, same exact load as those bilateral stances, but still get the benefit, similar benefits in force production. And in our case, similar benefits in some of that stiffness that might carry over um, into mass specific force for the running aspect.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah. I guess part of I when I was feeling the pain, I was kind of like just like giving myself shit because like what was even the need to squat that much? And I think big fear, and I think you experienced this as well, like the whole endurance training with strength training. Like
mhm,
even though endurance training is the goal, part of me doesn't want to let go of all those strength that I've built,
mhm, mhm.
and obviously it's like a tug of war.
I don't think,
Um,
and for you, it's not the strength. Like for you, it's the size. You don't want to shrink. You say strength,
I
but
don't want to shrink. I don't want
yeah,
to
it's
shrink.
about, you don't
I,
want to
I
shrink.
also I also do value a certain level of relative strength, but mostly is the shrinking part.
Yeah.
It's like that tug of war, perpetual battle, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. What's your weight now? Because, we're going to post this and people are going to we're talking about this stuff. What's your weight now?
I'd say I've been fluctuating between 170 and 175.
Okay, that's great weight, right? That's
Yeah,
some old school good cycling weight.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've worked hard to get up there because I think naturally I'm more lighter. Like I have to try with my calories to maintain this weight.
Okay. All right. Well, we look forward on that. I know you're finishing up on a couple of weeks. We'll retest your FTP in another 3 weeks. Um, I can't remember how we got onto it, and I said my thesis. My thesis is built on top of this thing, and I showed you what the thing was. It's on the screen here. And while we're still testing out the, all the technology issues that I continue to have, we're gonna blame me. I'm the old guy here, so we're gonna blame me. Hoping that being mic'd in this time will actually lock in and that we don't delete a video. Um, I wanted to talk about what was the launching pad, what got me into this, right? So we'll do my backstory in another video or something like that. But I think everyone understands here that like I'm coaching you as well as others on this. And
Yeah,
what's that based off of? We hear about all these authority figures and everyone's doing these short videos that they're the coach and you should do this. And I always love to ask those guys. Some of them do get back to me, some of them don't. Like, hey, this sounds amazing. Where did you get it from? What's the platform? So here's where I got my launching pad that sent me into, oh my God, I'm 14 years in now. Yeah. So this is 2008. I can't remember when I found this. Um, but this is it. Everything is the launching pad of this. All research, development, and application that I've looked for started with this right here. I'll definitely, when posting this, include the title of all this. I think what jumps out at me, what I always remember, is that this is from Michael Joyner. I believe his background is anesthesiologist turned exercise physiologist, because everything I hear him talk about now is about training, right? So this is it, right? If you want to be an endurance athlete, we've got to understand what are the things that we can train. That's all I care about. I'm a coach, and all I care about is application. What can we train? Everyone talks about VO2 max, everyone talks about FTP, but there's things within this. And so that's what I want to talk about this. This is from, again, I will put the title on this, but this was my launching pad that sent me. And I feel like every square that's here, right? This is the performance velocity or power morphological components that's within this paper. Every one of these boxes I had to go into the rabbit hole to try to understand, right? There's two people on this paper, um, if this is what they have put together as a framework for endurance performance, like I wanted to understand how did they get to this, you know? And starting at the top here, if you say your performance velocity, your performance power has this is encompassed on three things, right? Within your three things is your aerobic, your VO2. Everyone's going to talk about, what does that look like aerobically in submaximal aerobic performance, as well as probably your VO2 max. That plus the performance of oxygen, that some of the anaerobic qualities that happen, because we know that inside the cellular level, these things happen simultaneously. It's just at what different rates, and that's going to be based on your fitness level, right, and effort at that moment, right? Um, and let me just expand on that a little bit. So we're looking at performance VO2 aerobic. We're looking plus performance O2 deficit anaerobic. Those are going to be different if I'm running a half marathon versus whether I'm running in a 5K, right? In the 5K, I do have the aerobic performance aspects, but I'm probably going to want to train and maximize the O2 deficit, the anaerobic qualities a little bit more, right? And then in a half marathon, I probably want a little bit of balance on that, maybe a little bit more of the aerobic side. That's where my mind kind of goes with these things now as I explain it to people. But going back to the aerobic side, right? That aerobic profile is built with several different characteristics. You've got lactic threshold. We're going to say that's submaximal effort, but everyone knows it as endurance. Everyone knows it as FTP, functional threshold power. And then also underneath that, you've got maximum oxygen consumption. There's your VO2 max. Okay, that's how high is the ceiling? We might measure that with gas exchange. You and I have done tons of the gas exchange on a metallizer to see where your VO2 max is, as well as the gear is in there. But what sent me on the journey of trying to understand this, and well, before I go down to the bottom, if we go to the O2 deficit anaerobic side, total buffering capacity, right? What is that stuff built from? And then along the bottom, they kind of just give you the roadmap. Hey, on the aerobic side, muscle capillary density, your capillary bed size, that probably really matters on the aerobic side. Stroke volume, that probably really matters. Maximum heart rate, and then the fractions of your maximum heart rate where these physiological zones are gonna lie that we're gonna train. Hemoglobin content, like okay, blood volume, total, red blood cell count. That's all going to change in training. That matters. And then this is the one. This is where I'm at now. You and I are having these conversations now, right? This is where I am as I finish the back half of my education, aerobic enzyme activity. This is the cellular signaling. This is inside the cell, the mitochondria. Like, how do we get the fuel into the cell? How do we communicate that? All the cascading effects that need to happen in the cell. It's enzymatic activity. Oh, we could train it. We know what zones these things kind of happen. We can train it. Um, and then there's a little split. Your distribution of power output is going to be a little bit of lactic threshold, a little bit of aerobic on one side, but more importantly, like how much can you grind? How do you deal with the buffering of that, right? Some of that being the our bicarbonate system, as well as being just more fit. As we're more fit, we can put a little bit higher outputs on without poisoning the tissues so much. And when I say poisoning the tissues, we're talking about changing pH balance, right? So, oh my God, like that was each one of these boxes set me down a rabbit hole after finding this paper and trying to understand all these things. And then, they're saying on the other side of this performance velocity or performance power, like all of that times your gross mechanical efficiency. This is why strength training is pretty valuable to the endurance athlete and just and overall everyone. But when you and I have these conversations, I'm always talking about mass specific force, why it matters. Um, and the idea here is that your gross mechanical efficiency is going to be based on your muscle type, fiber type acquisition, right? So I'm getting a little deeper in here. I would love to write an amazing thesis or an add-on to this piece of paper where they say the percentage of slow twitch muscle fibers that you have here probably is the biggest contributor to how good we are in endurance. I almost want to argue and attach onto that now your type 2A muscle fibers, or at least the characteristics on that, based on event. Based on event. So I would now, this is where I'm at. I would say absolutely gross mechanical efficiency. Absolutely, a big determinant of it is probably going to be our muscle fiber type. But I would extend that, not just type 1, but also type 2A, because I think that is super event specific. And then they talk about the orthopometrics and elasticity, right? Body orthopometrics, your body height. We're going to talk about the your distal segmental displacement of your limbs. What's the composition of the limbs? More muscle, more lean mass, more fat, all those things. And then that's what we're talking about. This is it. So when I say my thesis is built off of this is what I was talking about. So hopefully I did a good job of kind of just showcasing that where my mind went. And then, of course, I'm 14 years later, 118 half marathon later. Um, the goal this year is 55-minute 15K. That's the goal this year for me. I'm going to get back to some speed work. And yeah, getting back to the speed work, I am expecting to shrink a little bit because as a husband, as a father, as a business owner, as a coach, time is limited. So this is the thesis.
Yes. So when we were talking about this and how it applies to basically like triathlons or whatever endurance training you're doing, the aerobic performance VO2 part, that's sort of the foundation of performance, right? That's sort of
It's the,
like
it's the launching pad, right? We always
that's
talk
the launching
about
pad. That's like the zone two work and
yeah. You tell
all
me
that
what
stuff,
your
right?
yeah, you tell me what your weekly mileage is. It is, and then I'm going to ask for heart rates. And if I know how much of that weekly mileage is aerobic, well, that's the launching pad for the threshold work, for the endurance work, for the FTP work.
Got it. And
If
the
if that mileage is low, the first thing I'm going to encourage you to do is increase that mileage. And again, the mileage will be based on what distances, but everyone usually wants to go from couch to marathon performance.
hence your little line where you're like time and zone, like that's what matters, right?
Time and zone. Time and zone
Yeah,
because we have a good, I mean, when I have access to the metalizer, like when we use the metalizer for you, we know exactly what those zones are at the indirect physiological moment because we've captured that with the gas exchange machine, right? But before I had access to that, and I was just utilizing heart rate because it's correlation to these zones. I did really, really well when I finally got access to. So I was like, bam, I was right on the money. We know, I'm going to go back to the enzymes. These enzymes are super, super important, and they're built off of time in zone, right? We're going to progressive overload time in zones to make sure that we're getting these enzymes that are really, really going to allow the fuels to come in and not have to fight, right? Only so much fuel can get into the mitochondria. Only so much fuel can make it through our cellular membranes, right? Based on the amount of enzymes that we have.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. So the aerobic portion of it is the base of everything for
Yep.
endurance athletes. And then you have the anaerobic part, which is that's where you were talking about the 5K versus like the marathon. Since anaerobic is more like reserved for like sprinting to the finish line or like pushing hard during like an uphill cycling race, right? Or like some like high effort moment or
Yeah,
high intensity burst.
I like how you gave two formats there, right? We're going to conserve it. We're trying to conserve it for the end of a race, or we're going to try to conserve it for moments in the race where the effort does have to increase. And
Yeah.
then we're going to come off of that, right? Hill climbs, running
So
up a
yeah.
hill,
So this is where
some,
like the FTP work we were talking about with the wattage is important because I remember with for my first Ironman, it was in Blue Ridge in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and there was a big 5 mile segment where it was straight uphill, and that's why we trained so hard with FTP. Because at that moment, if you were at the race mitch, you would have seen like people getting off their bikes, walking their bikes, like they had to stop. And because of all the FTP work that we did, um, that was actually my strongest part of the biking portion. You know?
you say that, I laugh at myself. I remember I was with Coach Omar. I can't wait to get him on one of these. And he takes me up to Alpine. Alpine's over here in New Jersey for all the riders up here in Northeast that know it. And mileage, zone two mileage, cycling mileage a week, I will absolutely always dominate on that. But we're going up Alpine, and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get off this bike. So embarrassing.
It's tough. It's tough. And it's not like, and that's when we talk about, and that's where I was going to talk about like by the gross mechanical efficiency, like the third portion there, is that when you talk about like chemical versus mechanical, like for example, in that example where you had to get off your bike, it wasn't because your heart was giving out, it was because your legs were giving out, right? Is that what that third portion is about?
Yeah, a combination of things. Yeah. So when we look at the orthopometrics, did I have the fiber types? Because remember, when we say fiber types, we're actually talking about what's inside the fiber, right?
Mhm.
What are the components inside of a faster twitch of tissue, type 2A? Well, within that, right, I have a little higher force production, right? But with that higher force production moment, I also have faster fatigue. So, training
Yeah.
that, yeah, so training that, I want to access those fiber types. I want to access more of those motor units for these moments, but I've got to you've got to build them up. And then more importantly, on the aerobic side, once I'm done using them, I've got to recover so that, because I might have to use them again. So yeah, that's where the
Mhm.
gross mechanical efficiency can come in. But also gross mechanical efficiency in that moment also plays towards economy. Cycling economy, swimming economy, running economy.
Can you expand on economy?
Okay, cool. So economy is I like to say how easy at we're gonna say at sub-maximal moments we are. You and I, we'll use you and I as an example. You and I are great. Your VO, at one point, our VO2 maxes were very similar. I'll just case in point, just kudos to you for blowing it out of the water now. But at one point at the start of this journey, our VO2 max score were similar. So the size of our motor were very similar. But you and I would go run my zone two. I say my zone two because that's what it was. That's how we kind of defined the run.
Mhm.
And at the same heart rates, right? At the same heart rates, at the same paces, you spent more time in zone three, sometimes a little bit in zone four, while I was predominantly, if not almost all, in zone one, zone two. I was more economical than you
Okay.
were, right? At the same pace. Um, the our weights were similar at the time. We knew that our VO2 maxes were the same time. But meaning I was using a little bit more less effort than you were from as defined by heart rate.
Got
So
it. So
that's what I mean by economy.
an example of that would be like if we were in a race, holding that, let's say 9 minute pace or 9:30 pace when you're at zone two, zone one, zone two, and I was at zone three, sometimes zone four. If we kept that same pace during like let's say a half marathon, then I would eventually just drop off, right?
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
wouldn't be able to hold. I'd
w-
be I'd be having a lot more effort in my
yeah.
run than you would.
I might say that you might gas out before, absolutely. Or I will also say is at towards the end of the finish line, I can drop a hammer. Um, I probably have a little bit more in reserve to drop the hammer where you may not have it.
Got it. Yeah,
And that was cool. That was cool because at that time you got to see that. I remember how frustrated you
that
were,
was so frustrating. Yeah,
and you would not understand how. Well, like I don't understand. We're running at the same pace. Why is your heart rate so much, less?
yeah,
That's not the
yeah.
case now. Like we will absolutely give you guys credit, give you credit so that everybody that is not the case now. I think when I tested you before you went out to Colorado, you were in the 70s from a VO2 max standpoint. And then only doing zone two, I'd only assume that you increased your aerobic portion of that. So I know your zone two is probably significantly higher. If not, how long have you been in Colorado now?
Like 10 months.
Yeah, 10 months. I know just from the literature itself, just from living in the higher altitudes, that your aerobic base got better. And in addition to that training, the one thing that probably got worse for you, and maybe we could talk about that on another call, is the FTP. You're probably struggling to do FTP at that higher altitude because we
Yep.
know that, yeah, we know that's something that kind of happens.
Yeah.
So that's why I would tell you when you go visit family out in Florida and you're at closer to sea level, all those training sessions that you do, those should actually probably be FTP sessions.
Mm. In Florida, you mean?
Yeah.
Mm.
So something when you next time you head out on vacation and you be like, all right, I'm away from altitude right now. That could be a good moment to just to, when we talk about getting leg strength back or and actually training those physiological these terminants that we have here. That would probably be what I would say for you the next time you get out of Colorado, you go vacation. Because you're by default, just by the altitude alone, you're getting huge aerobic benefit.
Yeah.
Like
Um,
if I went up there, if I when I go up there to you, I'm gonna be huffing and puffing. I guarantee you my heart rate is gonna be like, oh my God.
yeah, that's how it was for me when I first moved here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I wanted to go back to the gross mechanical efficiency.
Oh, we're running out of
Um,
time here. Let's quickly talk about it. Let's wrap this up in 3 minutes here.
okay. Just because that's something that I've like struggled with, especially like with while trying to incorporate strength training. Leg training, obviously, as you know, for endurance, like it's a high volume. It's rough.
Yeah.
It ends up leaving you pretty sore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And oftentimes in my zone two sessions, even FTP, like my legs are just struggling. Even though my heart rate isn't like sometimes in zone two, I have a hard time getting to zone two in my zone two sessions on the bike,
Yeah.
just because my legs just can't fucking push.
Right, right.
It's just like too much. So that's sort of like where the balancing component comes in, right? In terms of when to do the leg strength training and when to do like a long zone two versus
Yeah.
FTP.
That's all that's I got to be all in the cycle on how you plan it, right? I think we had
Mhm.
I like the 14-day format. That way you can have rolling training days, but based on or built solely upon recovery, right? I don't want to do FTP. I don't want to do FTP on Monday and Tuesday go into a heavy leg session. I'm probably not going to perform that leg session the hardest. I also don't want to do a heavy leg session on Monday and think I'm going to have the best FTP session on Tuesday, right? So
Yeah.
I like 48 hours. How do you get the trick is how do you get the heavy leg strength session and have a 48-hour window just for the legs, just for the legs. Swimming, not a problem, right? You can
Yeah.
throw
Swimming not a
swimming in
problem.
there at any point, but so that we can recover from that heavy leg session, so that doesn't rob from the FTP session.
Yeah. I guess I'm just finding like I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, but I'm not getting sore until like 2 days later. And but then 2 days later, I'm really sore.
Yeah, well, DOMS,
That's not how I
right?
used to be.
That's by
Yeah.
definition, delayed onset muscle soreness, right? Yeah, by
Yeah.
definition. So,
Okay.
but all right, we'll wrap this up here. We're gonna see how this comes out. Hopefully, it comes out well. And now, I mean, I don't know how long we've been having this conversation, but now here it is. Everything that I have learned, everything that I continue to learn, the rabbit hole of research that keeps me up at 2 in the morning, because that's just how my manic mind works when I'm stuck on a topic of interest. Started from this right here, and I'm going to make sure that I attach the title of this paper, um, because I have not seen to date anything laid out, the framework laid out like this.
Cool.